Morning. Today is the 30th day of First Adar. It's also the day of the unknowable head, because Lamed Adar Aleph, you can make out of that the word Radla. Radla is the initials of Reisha Deloit Yada, the unknowable head, the highest part of the crown. It's a day we only have 7 times in 19 years. Okay.
7 times in 19.
Every time we have a year with 13 months.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, only 29 days. There's a 29 days in Adar. Okay. So it's also the 10th of March. So let's look more at the light metaphor. We started this last week, and we ended with the whole story about the change. You would say you said you would look in the concordance to see how many times light appears.
Unfortunately, my concordance didn't survive the transfer.
Okay.
And I looked up. I can't find. I'm seeing them in English. I can't find it. Do you understand?
I'll look it up.
There's a number. I mean, there's.
I'll look it up. I just don't know. Okay. So he said that just as the soul provides a favorite metaphor, so we find that the term light is favored by the mystics, and we explained all this why. And then he had these 6 reasons that I guess they're from Yosef Albo, who's the author of Sefer HaIkarim. So he explains why they switched from name to light. A lot of people don't know that they switched from name, but that was the early description. When Rashbi in the Mishnah in Avos, he wants to speak about something spiritual, he says there are 3 crowns, and then he says V'keter Shem Tov, and the crown of a good name is above them all the other 3. So there's 3, and then there's one that's above everything. Okay. By possessing all these qualities, light bears a greater similarity to the things which are free from matter than anything else to which just such things may be compared, and hence they are compared to light so as to make the matter intelligible. Likewise, Rabbi Yosef Ergas lists the following advantages. Light is the most subtle and tenuous of all sense perceptions. Light has numerous qualities characteristic of the divine emanations. As for example, so now we're getting into this thing of emanation that we talked about, what the difference between emanation and creation is, that it's like an outflow, a natural outflow. Of course, in God's case, it's not natural in the sense that it's not necessary. It could be different. He chooses it to be revealed, and there's times when he chooses it not to be revealed. So light is emitted from the luminary without ever becoming separated from it. This is a very interesting idea, because today we definitely agree with this. According to relativity, light actually never leaves the sun. In fact, light never travels, actually. Space contracts around light. It's a completely different picture of reality. And so it's always in its source. It's like it's never left.
Einstein helped with.
Yeah. It's a pretty crazy way to describe it.
That's the way we accept it now?
I don't think we accept it, but that's how we...
That's the prevailing...
That's one of the ways to interpret it, as if it's never left its source. And instead space is changing around it. And not, yeah. Even when its source is concealed or removed, thus no longer emitting perceptible light, the previous rays do not remain entities separate from the luminary, but are withdrawn with it.
That's what he's...
Yeah, he's saying something very similar, which is I don't know how we say it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
He's saying that this is Rabbi Yosef Albo, and this is Sefer HaIkarim, so we're talking about the 14th century.
Yes, right.
What does that even mean? Our understanding was that if you take the sun away suddenly, if the sun would disappear, you'd still have light on Earth for 8 minutes. Why? Because that's the time it takes for the rays of light. So rays of light that have already extended will continue to extend until they reach the Earth. But actually, as far as I understand, according to special relativity, that's not the case. And what would happen is that all the light would disappear instantaneously. Yeah. Now, this is not so easy, because we see this on a grander scale. I must have something wrong, because when you look at a grander scale, the whole principle of of cosmology today is that we're seeing light from the past. And it may be that the structures that gave off that light, be it a supernova or something like that, is already gone. So I don't know how to explain that fully. Does it mean that... this is not accepted. Let's say this is not accepted. There seems to be some kind of contradiction here. But that's what he says, that the light would continue. The previous rays do not remain an entity separate from the luminary, but are withdrawn with it. This is a unique quality of light which is not shared with any other substance. So I don't know what this means. Light spreads itself instantaneously. So today we do have a speed of light. We just say that it's what we call infinite. According to Einstein, it's the fastest speed possible in reality. I think that there's that piece of his theory is slowly breaking apart.
Yeah,
it's been breaking apart for about 40 years, 50 years. Light irradiates all physical objects and is able to penetrate unhindered all transparent objects. Okay. Light does not mix and mingle with another substance. So, I don't know what that means, but today the way we see it is that photons of light are actually the energy that's absorbed by atoms and cause the electrons to move up or down in energy levels. So I don't know if that counts as mixing or mingling. But again, this was the way that they saw it. Light per se never changes. The way they saw it is always how a common person would see it, like without too much inquisitive science. Because again, we're talking about a metaphor. We're not trying to describe the world. We're trying to use something out of common experience that could explain something that's not common in our experience. And light is pretty common in our experience. It could be that this is the way that we feel it, that we feel that light never connects with anything, never really mingles with anything. But again, that's a little bit difficult because even in their common experience, you know what, very hard to understand this because, well, I guess they might have there might be a different experience or understanding of heat. But even in the Talmud, we talk about Amvashel b'karnei chama, that a person's cooking in sunlight. You put an egg outside, sometimes it gets hot enough, and you can cook in it. So to say that it doesn't mingle, you see that there's heat transfer.
Yes.
So would that constitute for them as for me that's mingling? I don't know.
Yeah.
Light per se never changes. The perception of more or less intense light or of differently colored lights is not due to any change in the light per se, but is due to external factors. This is important. It could be that this is where all this is coming from. There's a metaphor that's used all the time, which is that light passing through a sphere, for instance. A sphere is considered to be some kind of entity. It's not some kind of mental entity, it's an actual entity. That's at least the way that the Kabbalists look at it. And so when it passes through it, it becomes colored, as it were, by that sphere. So Hashem's infinite light, which is infinite revelation, which is colorless, or contains all the colors, when it passes through, let's say, Chesed, suddenly you feel that it's loving kindness. And the mashal that they use for it, and this is a mashal that's in Chabad, it's everywhere, it's actually developed further. There's 4 different interpretations of the mashal. It's a very big deal, this thing. It's like when you have you put something that's colored, some kind of colored liquid into a glass. And so you see the glass as if it's that color. But nothing is really changed in the glass. The glass continues to be transparent.
Yes.
So the glass is like the is how the light is supposed to be understood. It's not really changed. It's the same, but what you're seeing is what you're seeing on the inside. So this is a little bit of a reversed picture because in Kabbalah it's the opposite, that the light is on the inside and the sphere is on the outside. But it's the same idea, just to reverse. But so that's a very common metaphor. It's really well developed. It's something that has 4 different interpretations. They're all discussed in Chabad. So light per se never changes. The perception is just of differently colored lights is not because of a change in the light, but due to external factors. And external factors are the sfirot. Light is essential to life in general, so this we definitely agree, right? There's no life on earth without light, because that's what starts the whole chain of the whole food chain. That first of all, plants receive light, they turn it into carbohydrates.
In very deep places of the sea,
right?
And we can say light penetrates it.
No, they're different. It's called synthesis. Instead of photosynthesis, it's called chemosynthesis or heat synthesis. What they do is, there are organisms where there's no light, and they still survive. And the reason they survive is they use heat. Either they use heat from thermal induction from the earth, from the earth's core, or they use chemical synthesis.
Heat, right.
They take some kind of chemicals that they find, and that triggers their process, and that creates carbohydrates. It's very interesting that you can do this. So you just need an energy, some kind of energy source.
Yeah, source. You're right.
But predominantly, the way we understand it is the light is what starts the whole chain of the food chain. Light is received and absorbed relative to the capacities of the recipient, and so on. So here you see that he has this absorption, which would be like being heated. And it's absorbed based on the material that it's shining on. But here again, this term is only an homonymous approximation used by way of metaphor and analogy. It is not to be taken in its full literal sense. Rav Joseph Albo already cautions that no error should be made to the effect that intellectual light is something emanating from a corporeal object like sensible light. Rabbi Moses Cordovero, the Ramak, is still more emphatic in warning that this metaphor must not be carried too far, for there is no image whatever that can be imagined that is not corporeal. Okay. Light is different for us today. It's not corporeal in the usual sense, because it's its own medium. That's a very strange idea, but anything you have like sound waves, they have to be carried by something. There has to be some kind of medium that will carry them. But light doesn't need any medium. That's why it passes through empty space. It needs no medium at all. There's no sound in space because there's not enough molecules to carry the sound. But
that's pure silence.
In space,
you can't have pure silence. I looked it up. I checked. Silence here does not exist.
No, they have silent rooms.
Is it?
Well, I'll say it like this: they don't echo anything. So if you don't make a sound, there's no sound there. They have silent rooms like that.
Really?
But you can make a sound. The moment you make a sound...
Yeah, it's not silent anymore. But there is such a thing as pure silence?
No, I mean, again, silence. If you're making sound, you'll hear it at some level. Okay, but these rooms are so absorbing that you'll hear it like just because you're near it.
Wow.
But anything that comes out will be drowned like for in a second.
These experimental rooms? Or
Yeah. They do it to check. They do it to check a lot of. There's a lot of psychological tests they do with it.
Really?
To see how a person reacts to space and other things.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay. So that's what he says. Don't carry it too far. Again, in our understanding of light, it is different from matter because it's not corporeal in the regular sense, because it doesn't need a medium to travel upon. Indeed, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch shows how in some respect this analogy too evidently breaks down and is inadequate. For example, the emittance of perceptible light from its source is automatic and intrinsically necessary, right? That's what we talked about. That it's an outflow that is natural. It's necessary. You can't stop it. But when it comes to God, that's not true. So the luminary cannot withhold the light. Needless to say that this restrictive quality cannot be ascribed to the emanations of the omnipotent, meaning of God. In conclusion, then, as the mystics never tired to say, it cannot be mentioned too often or stressed too much, that all terms and concepts related to divinity must be stripped of all and any temporal, spatial, and corporeal connotations and must be understood in a strictly spiritual sense. Okay, so again, I have this problem with the spiritual because spiritual is not much better when it comes to understanding Hashem. The material and spiritual all have the same problem. Hashem is neither this nor that. He's beyond both, and he's not less than both. So either you take it completely and you say these these metaphors that we have, they certainly describe that Hashem is not less than this, He's at least this. Or you can completely say He's completely beyond all of this. And that's the run and return that we talked about.
Yeah.
The run is the fact that I feel that God is imperceptible at all. There's nothing that I can. So I empty and there's nothingness. The return is, but I still have to have some kind of relationship, and the relationship that He's not less than these things. And again, there is this statement that we mentioned in Chabad that it's not just that He's not less than these things. This is what's important. These things that we perceive, they are what's important. And of course, He could be anything else, but the reason He created the world the way He created it is not in order to fool us, in order to create some kind of imaginary sense of connection. It's a real sense, it's a real connection. And that means that we have a real perception in, if we take ourselves as, again, the man is a metaphor, life is a metaphor, everything that we have in our scope of experience can be used to better understand godliness, but you need to have some critical thinking about it. It's not always the same. You have to think about how exactly this would be in godliness. Okay, so that pretty much we finished this chapter, and God willing, continue tomorrow.
What is he coming back?
I think he's coming back this week, but I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know what day. I need to ask him.